Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Wendy Griffith. Today, major fires raging near Jerusalem. It could be the biggest wildfire in Israel's history, and suspects have been arrested for arson. Here at home, the Supreme Court hearing a potentially landmark case. The key issue, can taxpayer dollars be used to pay for religious schools? President Trump urging Americans to be patient as a new report indicates the economy is turning down. But despite concerns over international trade, the president says he's in no rush to make a deal with China. And will the international talks actually prevent Iran from building nuclear weapons? Or are the Iranians just stringing the U.S. along as they work on those weapons? These stories and much more today on NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And we begin with those massive wildfires raging near Jerusalem. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declaring a national emergency, and Independence Day events have been canceled. Officials say it may be the largest in the Jewish state's history. The flames breaking out in central Israel. Wow, look at that. Powerful winds fueled the inferno, triggering evacuations in at least 10 communities. Firefighters still far from gaining control, and the danger is growing. Winds could reach more than 60 miles an hour, making conditions even more dangerous. According to authorities, they've arrested 18 people for suspicion of arson. And the Times of Israel cited calls by some Palestinians on social media to set fires amid the chaos. Several countries are sending firefighting aircraft to Israel as crews battling to extinguish a wildfire that had shut down a major highway linking Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and sent drivers scrambling from their cars. Wow. Prayers for Jerusalem. We'll keep you updated on this story on cbnnews.com. And here at home, the Supreme Court weighing a key case involving education and religious liberty. The issue at hand, whether tax dollars can go to a religious charter school. It's a case that some believe goes against the Constitution's free exercise and establishment clauses, while others hope it leads to publicly funded faith-based schools across the country. CBN's Brody Carter has our story.
Protests from both sides of the Supreme Court after the case sparked national debate, from faith freedom advocates to civil rights groups.
We're seeing a crisis in our education system and parents standing up across the country asking for more options. And this is a beautiful avenue for parents to have more options in the state of Oklahoma.
Justices debated whether publicly funded charters would be private enough to teach religion or too connected with government to avoid violating the Constitution. They also pressed whether this move goes against the Establishment Clause.
St. Isidore doesn't want to establish a secular school, which is what the public benefit is. Instead, they want to establish a religious school. So as I see it, it's not being denied a benefit that everyone else gets. It's being denied a benefit that no one else gets, which is the ability to establish a religious public school.
Opponents, including Americans United for Separation of Church and State, argue the state should not support or sponsor any religion, with President Rachel Lazar stating if the U.S. Supreme Court allows Oklahoma to create a religious public school, it will be a dangerous sea change for our democracy. In challenging the creation of St. Isidore Catholic Charter School, Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond, himself a Christian, argues that if the court allows taxpayer funding for one religion, it must extend to all, including Wiccan, Sharia-based, and others.
We already have the Church of Satan that sought an application to fill out. I think they think this is lovely. You know, the Christians are going to fund satanic worship and indoctrination.
State Superintendent Ryan Walters, a charter school board member, has been a vocal supporter of the school, framing it as a matter of parental choice and religious freedom.
That means a free ability to choose the school of your choice, whether it's a religious education, whether it's a charter school, public school, homeschool, all of the above.
While some justices questioned whether St. Isidore meets public school standards, others pushed back on what they see as discrimination against religion.
Our cases have made very clear, and I think those are some of the most important cases we've had, of saying you can't treat religious people and religious institutions and religious speech as second class in the United States.
Justice Amy Coney Barrett has recused herself from the case. Her absence raises the possibility of a 4-4 split, a rare outcome that would leave Oklahoma's ruling against the school in place. After hours of arguments, the Supreme Court seems divided, weighing religious freedom with the constitutional limits on government funding. This is big, not just for Oklahoma, but for religious education nationwide. A decision is expected by early summer. I'm Brody Carter, CBN News.
Thanks, Brody. Turning now to the economy, President Trump says he's in no hurry to make trade deals with China or other countries. His statement coming as there are new signs of an economic downturn in the U.S. The president blaming former President Biden and asking Americans to be patient. CBN's Jenna Browder brings us that story from Washington.
President Trump addressed the Commerce Department report that shows the economy shrank 0.3% from January to the end of March. Speaking to the press in an open cabinet meeting, he put the blame on former President Biden.
He probably saw some numbers today, and I have to start off by saying that's Biden. That's not Trump.
The president is asking Americans to be patient. He says tariffs are not responsible for the downturn, and he's in no rush to make deals with China and other countries.
I'm in less of a hurry than you are. We are sitting on the catbird seat. They want us. We don't need them.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Fox News countries are lining up to negotiate new trade deals.
We're putting together this plan and executing on it day by day, week by week, and it doesn't all happen at once, but the first 100 days set the table for the successes that we're going to see in the next 100.
Some blame the economic downturn on companies stockpiling inventory, even before the tariffs went into effect.
Businesses themselves have announced that, they are uncertain about how much they will be able to sell in the future.
Now there are concerns the 145% tariffs on China could dry up shipping. And there are signs that's already happening. Cargo ships into LA, for example, have dropped 36% from this time last year. Big box stores are warning that shelves could soon look more empty. With 80% of toys sold in the U.S. made in China, Trump acknowledged families could see fewer gifts under the tree.
Maybe the children will have 2 dolls instead of 30 dolls,
And on the Ukraine front, some news there too. President Trump and President Zelensky have signed a rare earth minerals deal. The deal affirms a long-term strategic alignment between the two countries, and the Trump administration says it signals to Russia President Trump's commitment to the peace process. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Jenna, coming up, are the nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran really going to prevent Iran from building nuclear weapons? We'll hear from an expert who says Iran is just stringing the talks along while it continues its nuclear program. That's when we return. Nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran are set to resume in Rome Saturday, with Iran accusing Israel of undermining the negotiations. Despite these tensions, President Trump remains committed to negotiating a deal, but not everyone agrees that further talks are the best way forward. In this week's episode of The Global Lane, Dr. Ramesh Separad of the Organization of Iranian American Communities argues that the Iranian regime is merely seeking to buy more time to develop a nuclear weapon.
There is no goodwill at the table here. They are playing the same playbook that they have done with the previous administrations, whether it was the Obama administration or the Biden administration. So I think when we look at the holistic behavior of the Iranian regime, we have to really go back and understand, what does this regime stand for? It stands for terrorism, it stands for weapons of mass destruction, and they want to get their hands on the bomb. And they want to use these negotiations as a way to legitimize their terrorism at home and continue to bolster the IRGC's web around the world. And we need to really ensure that this regime is not going to be positioned for success through these negotiations. It should be the Iranian people that are positioned for success, who are calling for the change of regime.
Well, let's talk about that, because both President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu say Iran will never be allowed to possess a nuclear weapon, suggesting they'll take military action to prevent that from happening. So what would the Iranian people like to see happen?
I think what the Iranian people want is the recognition of the legitimate fight against this regime. When we talk about meaningful change, we need to really look at the message that's coming from inside Iran when they say down with the dictators, when they say democracy and freedom and Republic of Iran is what they're asking for. But when you look at the message in the protests and the ongoing strikes and any nationwide protests, people are saying, down with the dictators, be it the Shah or the mullahs. So we really have to take that message from the people of Iran to heart and understand how can we better support them as they are calling for a regime change in Iran. And to best support them is to recognize their right to overthrow this regime.
JNS reports that Swedish parliament member Ali Reza Akandi, an Iranian immigrant, believes a Libya-like deal to dismantle Iran's nuclear program would be insufficient. He says if Israel and the U.S. launch military strikes, they could destroy 1,000 sites and the regime would still remain. So he says the ultimate goal must be to topple it. So do you agree or disagree? What do you think?
The call for regime change, it's coming from inside Iran. We should agree with the message that's coming from the people inside Iran who are saying we don't want this regime, and they're paying it with their lives. When you look at the young men and women in the streets fighting the IRGC, fighting the Basiji forces at the cost of their lives. When you look at the political prisoners that are fighting until the last minute before they're executed. If you look at the execution rate in Iran, this regime, since August, since the new president has taken over, Pezeshkian, has killed and executed more than 1,000 people. Why would the regime have to execute this many people? Because they are afraid of the people's power and they are afraid of the organized movement for change that is taking more and more momentum. And no one should undermine the power of the Iranian people and their organized resistance movement when it comes to change and democracy in Iran.
Well, can it bring about real change? I mean, if the U.S. adopts a policy of regime change rather than negotiation, nothing has worked up to this point to bring the Ayatollahs down. So what will it take?
I think the policy of regime change that we experienced up to this point really hasn't worked. Obviously, there's ample examples of that, but I think policy of regime change from within Iran is the new approach that we need to take. When the people of Iran are resistant against this regime, and that resistance movement has been in place in the last 4 decades. It was the Iran's National Council of Resistance of Iran, the most organized and resilient and recognized opposition to this regime, who exposed Iran's nuclear threat to the world. They're the one who exposed Iran's missiles program. They're the ones who told the world that this regime is trying to get its hands on a nuclear bomb, and they also exposed Iran's web of proxies in the region. So it is the people of Iran who understand the most about what does this regime change mean, and we should really adhere to that message that is coming from Iran's organized opposition movement that really has this 10-point plan for the future of Iran that stands for the separation of church and state, stands for a non-nuclear, secular democracy, ballot box, where the people of Iran can actually decide who they want to have in the office instead of the theocracy that we're dealing with under this regime.
Okay, more support for the people. Dr. Ramesh Separad of the Organization of Iranian American Communities, thank you for sharing your time and insights. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Also on this week's episode of The Global Lane, a look at the impact of President Trump's tariffs on the price of new and used cars. And Erica Donalds weighs in on the Oklahoma charter schools case before the U.S. Supreme Court. You can see all of this on The Global Lane tonight on the CBN News Channel, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can also see it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Still ahead, he's the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and the man Trump asked to open his cabinet meeting in prayer. Scott Turner shares how his faith is helping drive his mission. We'll hear from him right after this. Scott Turner is President Trump's head of housing and urban development. He's focused on reducing homelessness and building more affordable housing for Americans nationwide. He's also a man of faith. White House correspondent Kelly Wright recently spoke with Turner about his work and his hope for America.
Father, we thank you for this awesome privilege, Father, to be in your presence. For many Americans, their first introduction to Scott Turner came in February when President Trump asked him to open the first cabinet meeting in prayer. I caught up with him at Our Calling, a faith-based outreach for the homeless in his hometown of Dallas, Texas.
What's the purpose and vision of HUD?
HUD's mission is to serve the most vulnerable people in our country. We meet people right where they are. Housing is not political. Housing is not Republican, it's not Democrat. It impacts every individual and every family in America. And I love that. And so we are mission-minded at HUD to serve those that we've been called to serve, not only in housing, but in homelessness, in disaster recovery. And our mission is not to grow the amount of people that are on government subsidies, but to take people off of government subsidies, to help them get skills and workforce so that their life can be on a trajectory to where they are self-sustaining.
On the homeless crisis, Turner tells CBN News that government is not the answer and should play the role of facilitator to nonprofit organizations like Our Calling to help solve the problem.
There's an 18% increase in homelessness in our country right now. We want to decrease that. We want to eradicate homelessness. We want to help people not only get on their feet, but live life of sustainability.
And according to Secretary Turner, providing shelter is not enough.
When you think about homelessness, a lot of times people think about the shelter, which it is, but it's so much more. We want to look at it from a holistic standpoint. What about the mental health issues? What's the root of homelessness? What about addiction services? And so not only is it the shelter, but it's also how do we help people not only get off the streets, but to get rehabilitated, to get treated? What about the faith issue? What about the family issue? And not just to stay in a homeless shelter, but to help them to be on a trajectory of self-sustainability.
That takes a lot of effort. And in this economy right now, we have DOGE operating. What aspects have you done in launching a task force on DOGE to find the waste, fraud, and abuse so that you can deal with that and then be able to free up your staff and your agency to deal with homelessness?
At HUD, we're identifying waste, fraud, and abuse. For that $1.9 billion, for instance, we de-obligated that and sent it back to the Treasury so it can be used for other federal expenditures, if you will, to serve the American people. And so we have a great working relationship. We want to be stewards, faithful stewards over taxpayer dollars at HUD.
In order to do that, Turner believes in fulfilling President Trump's agenda of deregulation.
Regulations have hindered and crippled the housing affordability issue we have in our country. There's so many barriers to building affordable housing. And so we want to reduce the amount of regulations, both from a federal standpoint and from a state and local standpoint, to unleash the creativity, to unleash the capital, to unleash the ingenuity of private developers around our country.
Beyond removing regulations, Turner is working together with Interior Secretary Doug Burgum on a task force to find more federal land that can be used to develop affordable housing.
Now, this doesn't mean building on our beautiful national parks. There's about 400 million plus acres of underutilized federal lands that we're identified and looking at to where we can help with the housing affordability crisis and the lack of affordable housing. We need about 7 million units of housing in our country.
That's substantial.
And so we're being very creative under the president's leadership.
Under President Trump's first term in office, Turner was chosen to lead the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council.
Opportunity zones. That was something that was always near and dear to you and the president during his previous administration. Is that still one of your priorities now?
It absolutely is. The expansion and the continuation of opportunity zones is very important. Opportunity zones over the last 5 years, since their inception, have realized about $84 billion in capital investments and private money investments inside of opportunity zones. One stat that I really love is 1 million people were lifted out of poverty inside of opportunity zones.
Secretary Turner knows the value of teamwork between government and private entities. Before coming to Washington, he served 2 terms in the Texas legislature, played 9 seasons in the NFL, and held the role of associate pastor at Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Texas. His faith is also openly displayed on the homepage of HUD's website with his statement, "God blessed us with this great nation, and together we can increase self-sufficiency and empower Americans to climb the economic ladder toward a brighter future."
I want to thank you for the opportunity of being able to talk to us at CBN News. My final question for you, what is your hope for America, and how does your faith in God propel you to show that hope to Americans?
You know, the Bible says, blessed is a nation whose God is the Lord. And my hope is that we all recognize the sovereignty of Christ. We all recognize the blessings of God, the grace of God, and that we live in the greatest country on earth, and that it is our responsibility to give him honor and praise and reverence, and also to steward well over this great country.
Kelly Wright, CBN News.
And thanks, Kelly. Coming up, reading the Bible publicly in Washington, a calling on Americans to return to God's principles. We'll have that story when we come back. And finally today, an annual reading marathon in our nation's capital is urging Americans to return to God's principles. It's called the U.S. Capitol Bible Reading Marathon. This year's event brought over 500 people from 18 states and 6 countries to the front of the Capitol building. Volunteers, including several U.S. representatives and the House chaplain, read aloud the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation for over 90 consecutive hours. The purpose of the event? To remind Americans that the Bible is, and always should be, the foundation of our country. Amen to that. And that's it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our shows on the CBN News channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen today. You can email us at newswatch@cbn.com. Reach out on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I'm at Wendy G. CBN on Twitter or X now. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day, and God bless you.